All right. So, you know how sometimes it feels like you're constantly pushing kids to put in more effort?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And it's like this worry that we have as adults involved in their lives, like, are we pushing too hard?
Right.
Is it going to backfire?
Hmm.
And then the flip side, like, if we don't push, are they just going to become, quote unquote, lazy?
Yeah, totally.
So we're diving into that today. This whole idea of how to help kids develop a strong work ethic, but in a way that feels good for everyone.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, you sent over this article that had some really interesting insights, and it kind of reframes the whole conversation around kids and, well, laziness.
It really does.
Yeah, the article's big point is that what we perceive as laziness is usually a sign of something else going on. So we're going to pull out some of those underlying causes and then look at the practical strategies that the article suggests. Things you can actually use in your life.
Sounds good.
All right, so your article jumps right in and says, forget that simple idea of laziness. It's way more nuanced than that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that might be going on beneath the surface when a kid just doesn't seem to want to put in the effort?
Well, one of the biggest ones, and this is something the article really digs into, is that sometimes kids just aren't interested.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Like if they don't connect with what they're doing or if it feels totally irrelevant to their lives,
Mm-hmm.
it's totally natural for them not to be motivated. Like think about it.
Yeah.
If someone told you to spend hours on something that you found completely boring,
God, no.
would you be jumping at the chance?
Absolutely not.
Probably not. And it's the same for kids.
Yeah, so the article talks about making learning more relevant and also fun, which I think is huge.
Huge, yeah.
But how do we actually do that? Like beyond just, saying make it fun.
Right. Well, the article had some good suggestions. One thing you brought up is connecting learning to their passions. Like if you have a kid who's obsessed with dinosaurs,
Oh, yeah.
but you could turn math problems into something about like calculating how much a T-Rex would eat in a day.
I love that.
Or their writing assignment could be about researching different dinosaur habitats.
So creative.
It's just about getting a little creative and
Well,
tapping into what already excites them.
totally. And the article also mentioned the importance of just encouraging their natural curiosity.
Oh, absolutely. Like providing them with books and documentaries and anything that feeds their interests.
Yeah, so it's like turning learning into this exploration
Exactly.
that they're leading.
Yeah. And another thing that the article talked about, which I think is a big one, is fear of failure.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
And sometimes as adults, we forget how intimidating it can be for kids to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like for them, it can feel like this huge judgment.
Absolutely.
And the article explains how that fear can be incredibly paralyzing.
Right, because if they're so worried about getting it wrong,
Yeah,
they might just avoid trying at all.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that actually ties into another point that the article brings up, which is a lack of confidence.
Okay.
Like if a child already believes they're not good at something, it's so much harder to get them to engage.
So how do we help them break out of that cycle?
Well, the article suggests that it's all about cultivating a growth mindset.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, it starts with how we talk to kids about their accomplishments. So instead of just praising the outcome, like saying, "You're so smart,"
Mm-hmm.
when they get a good grade,
Right.
the article suggests focusing on their effort. So you could say something like, "Wow, I'm so impressed with how much hard work you put into studying for that test."
So it's like highlighting the process rather than just the end result.
Exactly.
And the article says that this helps kids see their abilities as something they can develop, not just something they're born with or without.
Right.
Love that.
And another key part of fostering a growth mindset is how we talk about mistakes.
Okay, yeah, because the article really emphasizes that mistakes are opportunities to learn.
Absolutely. It's not about shaming them for getting something wrong.
Right.
It's about helping them see those moments as chances to grow.
So do you have any tips for how we can encourage that kind of thinking?
Well, one simple thing the article suggests is whenever a mistake happens, ask, what can we learn from this?
Oh, I like that.
It kind of shifts the focus from like a negative outcome to a learning experience.
Yeah, it totally reframes it.
And another thing the article mentions is sharing stories of people who achieve success through perseverance.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like find some age-appropriate stories about people they admire who faced challenges but kept working hard.
Mm.
It shows kids that setbacks are normal.
And it reminds them that success isn't always immediate.
Exactly.
Now, the article also talks about how feeling overwhelmed and lacking structure can contribute to this whole perceived lack of motivation.
Oh, for sure. Like, we all know that feeling of being faced with a massive task and just freezing up because we don't know where to begin.
Ugh.
And for kids, that feeling can be even more intense.
F-
So the article suggests setting realistic goals and breaking down those larger tasks into smaller steps.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of like tackling a big project. You wouldn't try to do it all at once.
Right, you break it down into manageable chunks.
Exactly. And the article really stresses the importance of involving kids in setting their own goals.
Okay, why is that so important?
Because it gives them a sense of ownership. If they feel like they're part of the process, they're much more likely to buy in.
That makes sense. And then we can help them break down those goals into smaller steps, right?
Exactly. Like, let's say the goal is for a child to complete a science project.
Okay.
Instead of just saying, go do your science project, sit down with them and ask, what are the different parts of this project? So maybe you break it down into researching, gathering materials, conducting the experiment, and then writing the report.
Right, so you're basically creating a roadmap.
Exactly. And then you can even break those steps down further into smaller tasks with specific timelines.
I see.
And the article highlights the importance of celebrating those small wins along the way.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Like finishing the research, for example. It just gives them that positive reinforcement and keeps them motivated.
Totally. And I remember the article mentions SMART goals.
Yeah,
Does that apply to kids too?
absolutely.
Okay, so remind me what SMART stands for.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Perfect.
And this framework can be really helpful when you're working with kids on setting goals.
So it's like giving them this clear structure to follow.
Exactly.
Okay, now another tricky thing that the article talks about is finding that balance between providing support but not doing everything for them.
Ugh, yes, it's a tough one.
Like, we want to help them, but we don't want to take away their opportunity to learn and be independent.
Exactly. And the article had some good advice on this. It said, the key is offering help when they genuinely need it,
Okay.
but resisting that urge to jump in and solve every problem for them.
Right, because if we do everything for them, they'll never learn to do it themselves.
Exactly. And the article emphasizes that the goal here is to empower their independence. So instead of immediately giving them the answer when they're stuck,
Yeah.
try guiding them with questions like,
Yeah.
what have you tried so far? Or what are some other ways you could approach this?
So it's about helping them figure it out on their own.
Exactly. And another thing the article mentioned is the importance of creating a supportive environment where they feel safe to ask for help.
Right, because if they're afraid of being judged, they're less likely to come to us when they're struggling.
Absolutely. And don't forget, the article also reminds us that our own actions speak volumes.
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
Like if we're constantly demonstrating perseverance and problem solving in our own lives, that's going to have a huge impact on them.
Totally. It's like we're modeling the behavior we want to see.
Exactly.
Now, the article also talks about the importance of fostering autonomy and a sense of responsibility. And one of the things it mentions is giving kids choices, even in small things.
Oh, yeah, that can make a big difference.
Why is that?
Well, the article explains that even seemingly minor choices can really boost their motivation
Oh, okay.
because it gives them a sense of control.
It's like they're in the driver's seat.
Exactly.
Right.
And the article also talks about assigning age-appropriate responsibilities like household chores.
Right.
And this does a couple of things.
Okay, what are they?
First, it teaches them practical life skills,
Mm-hmm.
but it also instills a sense of accountability and contribution to the family,
I love that.
and encouraging self-regulation, things like managing their time and staying focused.
Right.
Those are vital skills that the article highlights for their long-term success.
Totally. And I think it's also important to let them experience the natural consequences of their choices.
Yes, within safe boundaries, of course.
Of course.
But that's such a powerful way for them to learn and grow.
Yeah, it's like they get to see the real-world impact of their decisions. Now, one thing that seems to be a thread running through all of these points in the article is communication.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It really stresses the importance of effective and empathetic communication. So what are some key takeaways for our listeners on that front?
Well, the article says that active listening is crucial. Like really taking the time to hear and understand their concerns.
Right.
It makes them feel valued and understood.
Absolutely. And the article also warns against nagging and constant criticism
Oh yeah, that could be so damaging.
because it just chips away at their self-esteem and their willingness to try.
Exactly. So instead, the article suggests focusing on positive language,
Okay.
like specifically pointing out what they're doing well and offering constructive feedback in a supportive way.
So it's like catching them doing something good.
Exactly. And then offering guidance when needed.
I see. And I think the article also mentioned patience.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Patience and understanding are key. Every child learns and develops at their own pace.
Yeah, we can't expect them all to be the same.
Yep. Definitely not.
Now, the last thing I wanted to touch on is the article's point about addressing any underlying issues that might be affecting a child's motivation,
Yeah, this is a really important one.
especially if you're seeing what looks like persistent laziness.
Hmm.
So what are some of the things that we should be considering?
Well, the article reminds us to think about the possibility of underlying learning disabilities.
Okay.
Like if a child is consistently struggling, even with all the support and strategies we've talked about,
Right.
it's important to explore that avenue.
So talk to a professional and see if there's something else going on.
Exactly. And the article also emphasizes the importance of addressing their basic physical and emotional needs.
Like making sure they're getting enough sleep, eating nutritious food, and that there aren't any emotional well-being concerns.
Exactly. Because a child who's constantly tired, hungry, or anxious
Yeah.
is naturally going to struggle with motivation.
That makes perfect sense.
And finally, the article concludes by saying that creating a balanced lifestyle for kids is essential.
Okay, what does that look like?
Just making sure they have enough time for work, play, and rest.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really insightful deep dive. So to sum it all up for our listeners, it sounds like inspiring hard work in children isn't about being stricter or setting impossible demands.
No, not at all.
It's more about nurturing that internal drive,
Yeah.
sparking their curiosity, making learning something they genuinely want to do, and building their belief in themselves step by step.
Exactly. It's about creating that supportive environment where they feel safe to try, emphasizing their effort, giving them a sense of control, and being really attuned to any deeper reasons why they might be struggling.
Yeah, it's a much more holistic approach. It's about looking at the whole child.
I agree.
Well, I don't know about you, but this has given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
So for our listeners out there, as you think about the children in your life, what resonates most with you from all of this?
That's a good question.
And how might shifting your focus to fostering that intrinsic motivation, that internal engine, lead to not just better grades or completed chores in the short term,
Right.
but to a more resilient, engaged, and ultimately successful and well-adjusted young person in the long run?
I love that.
I think that's a question worth holding on to. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.